only problem is in Georgia is if they don't like the poetry. You gotta wonder where they're gonna be shooting the guns, not necessarily up in the air. Right, Dallas? We do that in Georgia. I'm going to talk about these two poems of John Berryman's that are from his Dream Songs, which is a book-length poem. I think there were 385 of them when he finally finished. And I'm going to talk about the rhymes in them. And the reason for rhyme is pretty obvious. There's only a couple reasons. The pleasure of the sounds. They're like notes. They're like it's like music. It's the music of our language, of words, or the sounds. And another reason is it's a way, the rhymes, and maybe particularly end rhymes, and I'm not going to only talk about end rhymes here, I'm going to talk about internal rhymes as well. It's a way of kind of pinning, I see it as a way of kind of pinning the poem to the page, or nailing it to the page, and somehow holding it in some kind of place. But the most important thing is the sounds, the kind of patterns they can make. Every once in a while, somebody will say to me, usually an older person, at somebody's reading, sometimes mine, they'll say, "How come poems don't rhyme anymore?" And I can usually restrain myself, but I often hear myself saying in my head, "Are you fucking deaf?" You know, poems are full of rhyme. They're just not where a lot of us grew up expecting to hear them. At the end of a 5-beat line, there's a rhyme, and then there's another 5-beat line without the rhyme, and then there's a 5-beat line with the rhyme. We became, our ears became attuned to iambic pentameter. That's one of the reasons so many American poets, and particularly Dr. Williams, ranted against the iambic pentameter. But in fact, we can't avoid the iambic in English or the anapestic, because that's the nature of English. It's ascending language, but we don't have to write in iambic pentameter. But I made notes on I just draw lines between. You can't see it on yours, but I'll just hold it up so you can see. Just drawing lines and circles between all of the sounds in these poems. And I'm going to I'll just read one and talk about it a little bit, read another one and talk about it. I chose these two poems, these two dream songs in particular, because they're both elegies, one to Stevens and one to Roethke. Lowell used to say that he hoped Berryman would die before he did, so he couldn't write an elegy for him, for Lowell, because his elegies are, unlike most elegies don't kind of criticize or are not critical of the person that they're writing about, but he does. He comments on personalities, and he's baffled by Stevens' abstractions and things like that. So read the poems, but to me that was just picking the elegies. There's many elegies in the dream songs, many extraordinarily beautiful to Delmore Schwartz in particular, but they're just unusual elegies and a way of having a little bit of thematic connection, just these two poems. But I'll read the Roethke poem first, a strut for Roethke. Most of the dream songs are not titled. These two happen to be. Almost all of them are only 18 lines. This one is one of the few exceptions, the Strut for Roethke. They're all 18 lines, 6-line stanzas. And they're heavily end-rhymed, but not in a particular pattern, not in a predictable or received pattern, but they're very heavily end-rhymed, maybe 90%. But then they're filled with internal rhyme, internal sounds. I talk a lot in class about we have to be aware of the nature of certain sounds, what certain sounds do, automata, etc. This is called, and oohs and ahs and ohs and ums and stuff, you might want to try to use words, those sounds in certain passages where those kind of sounds might be more called for. If you want to, if you have a harsher line, the harsher sounds, the long E, I, A sounds are harsh sounds. Ack, those kind of sounds. They're painful, and if you hear them frequently kind of close together, they can be kind of painful. All of this kind of stuff, this rhyming and internal rhyming in particular, is not supposed to be really noticed by the regular reader. It's just supposed to do the work. It's supposed to do the work for the poem. But we're not just regular readers, most of us here. Most of us are writers, so this is the kind of stuff we do need to pay attention to. I just thought of something I think Rimbaud said, thinking about the long A sound, A. If you hear that a lot of times, it can be painful. But synesthesia, he described, he said the long A sound sounded to him like a hairy corset of black flies around something. Again, synesthesia, Dr. J, Samuel Johnson, the original Dr. J, Samuel Johnson, said that a trumpet, the sound of a trumpet reminded him, sounded scarlet, sounded like the color scarlet to him, mixing up the senses. Another poetic tool, as well as onomata, etc. Westward, hit a low note. I have to read from this because I have so much handwriting on that. Westward, hit a low note for a roarer lost across the sound, but north from Bremerton, hit a way down note. And never cadenza again of flowers or cost. Him who could really do that cleared his throat and staggered on. The bluebells, pool shallows saluted his over needs, while the clouds growled, and snapped and crashed. No stunt he'll ever unflinch once more will fail. Oh, lucky fellow, eh, Bones? Drifted off upstairs, downstairs, somewheres. No more daily trying to hit the head on the nail, thirstless, without a think in his head, back from wherever, with it said. Hit a high, long note for a lover found needing a lower into friendlier ground, to bug among worms no more around jungles where I blurt, what for? Weeds, too, he favored as most men don't favor men. The garden master's gone. Now look at all these sounds, just in the first few lines. Low in note, O, roarer, 3 O sounds in that first line. Roethke referred to the O sound. He called it the open evocative O, that open O sound. It's probably one of the more powerful of the vowel sounds. I just remembered something about consonantal sound, and Tim brought it up yesterday. I think it was B or D he talked about, but both B and D consonants, they're heavier and darker consonants, and you can, when they're called for, you wanna look for them sometimes anyway. But the nature of the sounds, what sounds in our language, what they evoke, what they make us feel. Vowels are more powerful usually, but consonants too. Now here he's making reference to the bluebells and pool shallows, Roethke's later years in the Pacific Northwest. I think Linda mentioned a series of long poems he wrote in his last book, The Far Field. And then he's talking about some of Roethke's insecurities. Roethke was very insecure. He thought all the other poets of his generation were more educated than he was. Lowell came from a kind of a rich family, royal family, kind of American royalty. The lucky fellow, A. Bones, that's his character, and it's a brilliant poetic device. Henry is the main speaker of the poem, and Berryman claims that Henry's not him, but he is. It's a literary device. But Henry has this friend, this unnamed friend who sounds like he's kind of uneducated, but he's very wise. He's an older man, maybe an older black man, because sometimes he talks in kind of a accent. And he's a brilliant device because he allows Berryman to go out on a limb and be a real kind of jerk, be self-pitying, talk about knocking himself off and stuff like that. And this character, who's actually not formally educated, but he's much smarter than Henry, calls Henry on this stuff. So when he says, "Oh, lucky fellow," because he's dead, he's being sarcastic. Henry's friend is being sarcastic. He says, "You asshole! You think you want to die? You think that's the good thing to die?" Berryman was often self-pitying in his poems. Often he didn't know enough to let this character call him on that, but he was often self-pitying, which is probably it's a common side effect of alcoholism. But look at, again, the sounds. Sound, down, rhyming, ow, ow sound. Couple more O sounds, coat or cost, and I can't see what I was rhyming cost with. More, maybe half rhyming. Throat and coat. Some of them end rhymed. And staggered on. The blue, poo, ooh sound of bluebells. The double L's. The double L consonant to me, and it's insoluted as well. And the ooh sound is insoluted. 3 times the L consonant and 3 times the ooh sound, vowel sound, repeated so close together. To me, the L consonant is the closest consonant to a vowel. It sounds more like a vowel than a consonant to me. None of this happens accidentally. When Tim said something about this yesterday, too, that the poet knows that this is going on. There's only so many sounds in our language, and some are going to happen accidentally. But what I ask people to do in classes is see what you've been doing in early drafts unconsciously, intuitively, accidentally, and then see if it is the right sound, and then maybe you want to hit that sound one more time. Or maybe the sounds are too close together, because when rhymes or sounds are too close together, they can poke you in the air, they jump out. If they're too far apart, you can't hear them. So see what you're doing, look at what you're doing intuitively first, and then start manipulating, and I use a cold word like that deliberately, then start manipulating those sounds. They should further the poem. They shouldn't be there just for the noise, but you will see how meaning and sound does go together often. And you're making mouth music. You're making something that feels good in your mouth. Emily Dickinson talked about, first, Mr. Frost, words exist first in the mouth, not in books. Emily, a word is like a lemon drop, and we taste it on the tip of our tongue, and then we flip it over to the other side, taste it over there, flip it over to the other side, taste it there. Words are, for us, are not just the dictionary meaning. They're palpable things. They're tasty things. So we need to keep all of this stuff in mind. If you think about it consciously for a certain amount of time, then it becomes part of your unconscious way of thinking, your body's way of thinking about writing. But you have to be conscious of it at first. Going on, no stunt, I guess I didn't, or unflinch, stunt and a sound of effort, of pushing. Fail, upstairs, half rhyming, somewhere, stairs, daily, here's the corset of black flies, nail and daily. Thirstless, he's making a reference there to Roethke's own drinking. Without a think in his head, there's the reference to his feeling insecure intellectually from a lot of his peers. He did get a master's degree at Harvard. He couldn't have been that, slow. hit a high, long note for lover found, needing a lower, lover, lower. He has a lot of ER kinds of rhymes, too, into friendlier ground. Why friendlier? Again, I think that's connected to kind of Berryman's self-pity. Well, it's better to be dead, you know. Life is too hard. I'm too tortured. It's really torture to be a poet. I mean, it's really, it's just so hard to be a poet. We might as well all just blow our brains out. That there is that element of self-pity in Berryman. It's one of the great flaws in his work, but I believe it was connected to his alcoholism. And I believe when he got sober at the end of his life, he realized how much of his work had been influenced by alcoholism, by the illness of alcoholism and its symptoms. Can't prove that, of course. And he wasn't drunk when he jumped off the bridge, but he somehow missed the river. I don't know how you jump off a bridge and miss the river. He landed on the bank. Then sometimes he talks in kind of baby talk. Henry talks in kind of baby talk, and that's the thing at the end. To bug among worms no more, around jungles where I say, what's the point? You know, what's the point of going to jungles? But he's also there admitting his own, there's only 2 mentions in all of the dream songs of anything to do with nature. Berryman just wasn't interested in nature very much. And one of them is about trying to take the rectal temperature of a bear that's hibernating. And that's not your everyday nature image. Weeds, too, he favored as most men don't favor men. That's a beautiful line. And Roethke was he did love that. He grew up in a greenhouse situation. His father was a greenhouse keeper. But Berryman just doesn't understand this. And the garden master's gone. Roethke was a lot more than a garden master. He was a lot more than that. So that's almost an insult to Roethke. It's almost like saying he's the unintellectual poet who specialized in flowers or something like that. And Roethke was so much more than that. That poem that Tim read yesterday is one of the greatest 20th century poems ever written. I could find more sounds. I could draw more lines between sounds and stuff like that. But you don't even pick up all of them unless you look really, really hard. But I just urge you to start paying more attention to the sounds of your poems, the noises. Dobbins likes to use that word noise rather than sound, and I use it synonymously as well. That's a huge part of poetry, but it doesn't have to be just that traditional way, i.e. iambic pentameter line rhyming in either A-B, A-B, or sometimes in couplets. Let's look at the Stevens one, too, because he didn't get Stevens, and neither do I, mostly, except his music. I think Stevens is best understood through his music. He had an unbelievably good ear. And in fact, all the great modern poets, Crane, Yeats, Stevens, Pound, Eliot, they had unbelievably good ears. And most of their imitators do not. And that is one of the things that makes them great poets, not because they're difficult, so-called difficult. Be wary of that word difficult, by the way, because usually it really just means arbitrary. And they want you to think difficult, and what's really arbitrary is really genius. And try not to fall for that old trick. So long, Stevens. He's wondering, is Stevens really gone? Is he over? He knows he's dead, so he's not saying, question mark, are you really dead or not? He's questioning his relevance here, I think. He lifted up among the actuaries a grandee crow. Aha, and he crowed good. I love that. That funny money man. You know, Stevens was an insurance man, a vice president of Hartford life insurance company. I don't think he was actually an actuary. Berryman probably just wanted to use that word. Is there a rhyme for that somewhere? Maybe. Good, man. The end rhymes are obvious. The mutter and er of mutter and must. Again, I can't see that because of my handwriting. He mutters spiffy. That's wonderful. He mutters spiffy. It's a compliment. He is saying his sounds were great, his noises were great. There's something great about him, but he make wonder Henry's wits though with an odd something not there in his flourishing art. Now, this is what you want to hear in one of your an elegy for you, Yeah, he was pretty good, but there was a big flaw in his work, and therefore there must have been a flaw in his life as well, or something like that. O veteran of death, you will not mind a counter mutter. He's not going to be, doesn't have much to say about it. He's dead, but what was it missing then at the man's heart so that he does not wound? It is our kind to wound as well as utter a fact of happy world. He doesn't get Stephen's abstractions. He doesn't get that Stevens won't write personally about himself and his own pain and losses. Berryman was called by lots of people at the time a confessional poet, but once when asked if he was a confessional poet, how he would respond to that, he said with rage and disdain. He did not consider himself a confessional poet, i.e. writing about his own life, but of course he did, and quite relentlessly. But you know, it's our lot to suffer and also to praise, to mutter a fact of happy world. But he's saying the metaphysics, the abstractions, he hefted up the metaphysics until he could not breathe the physics. He's just saying there's something missing and something cold in Stephen, something wintry. And I kind of agree with that. But the lushness, his heart seemed to almost all get poured into the music of his poetry. And Stevens himself said, when people tried to make tremendous exegeses about his poems, he said, they're just sounds and words. It's just noises, sounds and words, that's all. He was just playing with sounds and words. No, he must have had some ideas. But don't read Stevens for his ideas. Read him for his music, and then you will get his ideas through the music as well. But he just can't. Berryman just can't figure this out. What's wrong with this guy? He hefts up the metaphysics, but you can't breathe the physics, the daily life, our suffering, our joys. On our side, I never quite got that. I don't quite know what he's doing there. Monotonous or ever fresh, you know. Maybe the music is such at a high level in virtually every poem that he's saying it's monotonous. Oh, or at the same time, it's ever fresh. And you can say that. He's kind of hedging his bets there a little bit, but you can say that, and that's true. It sticks in Henry's throat to judge. Not so much that he sticks that he's not going to write it and publish it, but it sticks in his throat to judge that Stevens is brilliant. And he sees, this pisses him off, he sees Stevens is brilliant. He's better than us, but less wide. That's a mixed review. That's a kind of mixed review. But I think a legitimate one. I'm just trying to think if there are any other particular things about sound I wanted to say, but I always pronounce the word onomata, etc., because I hate to say onomatopoeia. I don't think that's my phone because I remember turning it off. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Things are about this in particular. If there's time, Carolyn and I will take some questions, but look for sounds, look for music. Think of words, not just their dictionary meaning, but how they taste, how they feel. And maybe sometimes try to let the music, the sounds of words, and the connotations of words, what they make, other things they make you think of, lead you into a poem, rather than just the dictionary meaning. You want to come up here, Carolyn?